Okay, and then let me share my screen on my iPad. You need to sit closer because it's recording, the sound is recorded. All right, let's begin our today's class. Okay, let's begin our today's class, which is monetary policy part 2. So this is when we are going to look into how government or central bank, okay, influence the aggregate demand with the use of monetary policy. Okay, so we are going to draw some mind map for today's class. Okay, so just okay, so first of all, monetary policy is considered as a demand side policy. Means what? It is being used to influence aggregate demand, just like fiscal policy. It is being used to influence the total demand of the economy or aggregate demand of the economy. So the first thing here, we know that this is a demand side policy. Okay, and today we look into monetary policy. So how government or how the central bank, because usually monetary policy is being controlled by central bank. So how they control the monetary policy to influence the total demand. So we say it's a demand side policy because it is being used to influence total demand. Okay. So same thing here, when we talk about monetary policy, it can be divided into expansionary and contractionary monetary policy. Okay, so first one here, we can see there is expansionary monetary policy. The purpose of expansionary monetary policy is to boost the aggregate demand. Like for example, the country is currently in recession, the country is not doing good, people are very pessimistic with the economy, so that's when expansionary monetary policy will have to be implemented. Okay, that one also spoil. But no one good thing in this industrial. You try that one. You press the on button. I think that one spoil. You try that one. Also cannot on. I think the button is at the front, the red color there. Okay. Okay. So expansionary monetary policy. That's good. Oh my god. Oh, can complain already this much now.
So,
Huh? Hey, really got people read the feedback here on this? Oh, that's very bad. Okay. All right. So expansionary monetary policy, okay, is to boost aggregate demand. That means to increase aggregate demand. Okay. So when we talk about monetary policy, right, it includes the instrument like money supply, okay, interest rate and exchange rate. But for our syllabus, right, we focus on the first two, money supply and interest rate. Okay. So to boost the aggregate demand, what the central bank can do is they can increase the money supply. Okay, they can increase the money supply, or they can reduce the interest rate. There's actually one more instrument called exchange rate, like they can reduce the exchange rate as well, but that is not for our syllabus at this moment. Right? We will learn more about exchange rate in the upcoming classes. But for now, let's just focus on these two instruments, as in when central bank were to implement expansionary monetary policy, right? They will increase the money supply or to reduce the interest rate. Okay. Now, we will look into that in details in a while. Okay. So first of all, right, when we talk about increased money supply. Okay, so how central bank can increase money supply? So the first thing that comes into your mind in terms of increasing money supply is like, for example, they print money. But again, that is not conducive. You can't always print money because when you keep printing money, your money will become worthless. Just like the case in Zimbabwe, when they keep printing money, it will cause the real value of money to fall. So that's not conducive. But there's one country they are able to do that, which is America, because they are a strong economy. So during pandemic or when the economy is not doing good, they are okay to keep printing money because until today we are still using their currency for all the international transactions. But for other countries, we can't always print money. But how are we going to increase money supply then? So we use this thing called open market operations. Okay, so to increase money supply, one way is through the use of open market operations. That means what? That means the purchase or the sale of government bonds. Okay. Sometimes when you read the textbook, it's called quantitative easing. Okay. It can also be called as quantitative easing. So when you see the word open market operation, OMO, or quantitative easing, basically you are referring to the purchase or the sale of government bonds to influence the money supply. Now, how is that work? Okay, how does that work? Let me give you an example. Let's talk about money supply first. Let's say now we have a central bank. This is a central bank. Okay, this is a central bank. And this is the normal banks. Okay, normal banks as in the commercial banks that we go through in our daily life. Okay, so let's say now the central bank would like to increase money supply. They want to increase money supply. So what should central bank do then? Okay, so central bank, okay, can buy, okay, they can buy bonds, okay, so they can buy bonds from banks. Okay, central bank buy bonds from banks. So therefore, central bank will give them money. Alright or not? Okay, so central bank give them money to buy bonds from the commercial banks. Okay, these are the bonds, the assets, the financial securities that are being held by the commercial banks. So now central bank give money to them to buy. So now when central bank give money to banks already, what happens is banks will have more money supply. Okay, so therefore banks will have more money supply, okay, to loan it out to people. To loan, okay, so more money supply to loan. So therefore, they can give more borrowing. Borrowing will increase, and that's how it stimulates the consumption and stimulate the investment. So that's how it increase the money supply. Okay, so that's how they increase the money supply with the use of quantitative easing or through the open market operations. So remember, when we talk about increased money supply, it's not always about printing money, but it's about the purchase or the sale of government bonds. Like for example here, central bank purchase the bonds. They buy the bonds from the banks to increase the money supply. Okay. So therefore, how can we show this in the graph? Okay, how can we show this in the graph? So now let's draw a graph here. Okay, so we can show this in a simple diagram like this. This is your y-axis. This is your x-axis. This is the origin. This is your interest rate, and this is your quantity of your money or real money. Now we know that money supply is always fixed and it can only be influenced by the central bank itself. So this is the money supply, and this is the money demand, which is downward sloping curve based on what we learned in the previous lesson. Okay, that's what we learned. So at first we start at this point A over here, at this interest rate, at this quantity amount of money. So now what happened is we have just said central bank does something to influence the money supply, right? So we just say that they give money to banks because they buy bonds. So more money supply. So here more money supply means what? Money supply increases. Okay, MS shift rightwards. So therefore now, okay, you can show that MS curve shift rightwards. Okay, so now from MS to MS1. Okay, so you can see from point A move to point B over here, there's a surplus, and therefore now it moves to new equilibrium at point C. Now at point C here, the new equilibrium, you realize that the interest rate is lower and the quantity of money becomes higher. So here you can see from point A to point C over here, you can see the interest rate has fallen down. Okay, and the quantity of money has increased. Okay, and that also fulfills like what the central bank wanted to achieve as well, lower interest rate, right? You see lower interest rate just now as we say in the beginning of the class. Okay, so that's how they achieve lower interest rate as well. Okay, so you can see here in this graph, you can see higher money supply and lower interest rate. So this is how the graph looks like when you look into the expansionary monetary policy itself. Okay. So we can be more specific. Okay, we can be more specific here. Okay, so we can look into more specific the details of the methods they can use to achieve higher aggregate demand through expansionary monetary policy. Okay, so now we can look into the details here. Okay, for example, to achieve expansionary monetary policy, the first one is central bank can control the reserve ratio. They can control the reserve ratio of the banks. Okay, so first one, central bank can control the reserve ratio. Like for example, they can decrease. Okay, for example, central bank can decrease the cash reserve ratio. Okay, cash reserve ratio of the commercial banks. Now, what do you mean by that? Okay, so let me draw some annotations and scroll down a bit first. Okay, so let's say for example, we have this Mr. A. Okay, Mr. A, he has 100 ringgit. So he has 100 ringgit. He would like to put into bank A, for example. So this is bank A. Okay, so what happened is, let's say Mr. A, okay, he want to put the deposits to this bank A, 100 ringgit. Now, every bank will have a required reserve. That means like whenever every person puts their money in bank, right, there's a certain amount of money that they must be kept by the banks for emergency purposes. Not everything can be loaned out because banks, they make money from loans. So not everything can be loaned out. So there are some money that should be kept by the bank itself for emergency. So we call it as reserve ratio. Okay, so we call it as required reserve. Required reserve. So for example, let's say I say that now central bank set required reserve at 10%. Okay, 10% required rate of reserve means what? Means that 100 ringgit, 10% must be kept. How much? 10 ringgit must be kept, no? Okay, the rest is what we call as excess reserve. Excess reserve means what? You can borrow to people. It can be used as a loan. You can loan it out to people, the 90 ringgit. Okay, so bank A can loan out this 90 ringgit to Mr. B. So now Mr. B has 90 ringgit already because he got the money from bank A, right? So let's say this Mr. B want to put the money in bank B, for example. So same thing, okay? Same thing, he want to put the deposits in bank B, 90 ringgit. Same thing, let's say the required reserve. Okay, let's say the required reserve remain at 10%. Means what? 90 ringgit, 10% must be kept. So 9 ringgit must be inside for the emergency. And then the rest, excess reserve, can be used as a loan, which is 81 ringgit, which bank B can lend to another person. For example, we have Mr. C over here. Now, Mr. C will have the 81 ringgit here already. So, Mr. C doing the same thing again. He go and puts the money into, for example, bank C. Okay, same thing as well. Put into the deposits. Okay, 81 ringgit. And then there's a required reserve of 10%. So, 81 ringgit of 10%. Let's say is some amount here must be kept by the banks, and then the rest, the excess reserve, can be used as a loan, okay, and then loan to other persons. So do you realize one thing? From the initial 100 that is being deposited by Mr. A, right? Okay, it can create a lot of money supply with the required reserve. You see, 100 ringgit that's being put by Mr. A, only 10% is being only 10% need to be kept. So the rest can be loaned out. So you see 90 ringgit is loaned out here, 81 ringgit is being loaned out here, and then this one is being loaned out here as well. So one thing we can see that the required reserve, okay, the amount of the reserve that the banks must keep, right, will have influence towards their money supply. So therefore, we can say that the required reserve will have an influence towards the money supply itself. Okay, you can use one very simple formula. I use 1 divided by the required reserve times the deposit. You can see that there's the total amount of money being generated in the economy. For example, 10%. 10% means what? 0.1. Okay, so therefore 1 divided by 0.1 times the initial deposit of 100 is how much? 1,000, is it? Yeah, 1,000. So you see from the initial 100 ringgit by the Mr. E, right? Okay, and with the 10% of the reserve, it will generate a total of 1,000 ringgit Malaysia in the economy itself. Okay, so therefore, do you realize one thing? Because of this required reserve, it will make some influence as well. Like for example, if central bank just say, okay, every bank will just need to cap 10% of the money for reserve, then 10% is very little only, so the rest of the 90% can be loaned out to people, and that creates further money supply. Just like this scenario, it will create a total of money supply of 1,000 ringgit at the end of the day. So why I'm talking about this is because this links to the things that I mentioned just now. As part of expansionary monetary policy, central bank can reduce the cash reserve ratio. That means the required reserve. So central bank can reduce the required reserve. Like for example, maybe instead of 10%, they can reduce to 5%. So if let's say required reserve is only 5%, that means the banks can borrow all the money up to 95%. So that means if people keep 100 ringgit in the banks, they can borrow out 95 ringgit and just keep the 5 ringgit as a reserve if the required reserve is 5%. So the lower the cash reserve ratio, okay, the more money can be loaned out, the more money supply.
Percentage is same for all banks.
First, yes, for all. Yeah, for all. Central bank controls all the commercial banks. Okay. Now, second is central bank can control the bank's rate. Okay, bank's rate. Now, what is bank's rate? So in your slides, she used the words bank's rate. Bank's rate actually is what we call as OPR, overnight policy rate. If you see newspaper, OPR is basically the bank rate. Overnight policy rate. Now, what is overnight policy rate? Overnight policy rate is like this. Like for example, let's say every day, right? There are some banks that are running out of cash. They want to borrow money from another bank. Let's say bank A is running out of cash. They want to borrow money from bank B. When bank A borrow money from bank B, right, there will be a interest being charged. The interest that's being charged between banks. So for example, bank B can lend money to bank A, but there's an interest amount. Okay, so these are the interests that are being charged by the banks themselves. So this interest determined by who? By central bank. So central bank will say, okay, now we reduce the overnight policy rate. We reduce the bank rate. For example, expansionary, if we talk about expansionary policy, central bank will reduce the bank rate. Means what? Now it will be very cheap for the banks to borrow money from each other. Then you might be thinking, oh, like that is not not affecting me, what? Like me as a consumer, how is that being affected? Why are we so concerned about OPL? Next time when you grow up already, you will start to be very, very concerned with OPL because when they adjust the OPL, the bank rate, it will influence your monthly installment for your housing loans. How come it's being affected leh? Because bank rate, yes, is the interest rate that are charged between banks, but at the end, that cost of borrowing will be passed on to consumers. So like for example, Bank A and Bank B, they borrow and lend money with each other, right? Yes, Bank A can always get money from Bank B, and they can borrow money from each other at the interest rate. So if the OPL is very high, that means the cost of borrowing for Bank A to borrow money will be very high. And at the end, who will they pass the cost to? Consumers. So this is why whenever, let's say when central bank increase the OPL, every time, like last year, they increased OPL so many times, so people are so worried. Okay, now of course there's a reason why they increase OPL. We talk about that later on, but they keep increasing OPL. We were so worried. Why? Because the moment they increase OPL means that the bank rate between banks themselves becomes higher, and at the end we'll pay higher interest payment as well. So that's how it's being affected. So from central bank increase OPL, then after that banks' cost of borrowing will become higher, and then after that our cost of borrowing will become higher as well. So your money installment for your housing loan that follows the market interest rate will be affected. So you will have to pay more every time when OPL increasing. So therefore, if we talk about expansionary is to boost aggregate demand, is to encourage people to spend more, to stimulate the economy. So bank rate should reduce. Okay, bank rate should reduce, OPL should reduce. Okay. Then the third way for the central bank to increase demand supply is through open market operation. Like what I say, open market operation by how? By buying bonds. Okay, buying bonds or T-bills. Okay, it's also part of bonds. Okay, from the commercial banks or from people like that. Okay, but usually they buy from banks, buy from commercial banks. Okay, so the details over here are basically the steps or the methods that the central bank can do to achieve expansionary monetary policy to boost the aggregate demand. Okay, so see properly the words you have a lot of keywords here. The first one is cash reserve ratio. The second one is bank rate or OPR. The other one is OMO. Don't confuse with all these words. Okay, you learned a lot of keywords today. I spent longer for the recap of today's class because you have a lot of new concepts and you are learning from today's lesson. Okay. Yeah, so that's for expansionary monetary policy. So you can see all these will result in higher consumption, higher investment, higher net exports, higher government spending. Okay. Now, could there be any problems when they use all this? There will be one problem, which is inflation. Okay, when they keep increasing money supply, more money flowing into the economy, people will spend like crazy, and that's when inflation will kick in. Okay. So we are done with the first part already. Now we can move on to the next part. You see, if you can understand expansionary, then you can understand contractionary already. Okay, so now we look into contractionary monetary policy. So contractionary monetary policy is to slow down the economy. Let's say the economy is overbooming, they want to slow down. So to reduce the aggregate demand. Okay. So by how? By reducing the money supply or to increase the interest rate. Remember, when you want to define interest rate, you always refer to the returns of the saving and the cost of borrowing. So higher interest rate means higher returns from saving and higher cost of borrowing. Okay, so same thing. To reduce money supply, how? They can use the open market operations. Okay, they can use open market operations. Like how? For example, we have central bank CB. Okay, we have banks. Okay, so central bank, what they can do is central bank can sell bonds. They sell bonds, they sell T-bills to the banks, and banks will give them money. So now when they give them money, so banks will have less money already. So less money supply, okay, to loan. So they have less money available to loan already. So what happened is borrowing will reduce, and therefore consumption and investment will also reduce. So that's how they reduce the money supply and therefore reducing the aggregate demand. So that is how they achieve a fall in aggregate demand through lower money supply. So therefore, how it is going to look like with the use of a graph. So same thing, let's show the graph here. You have y-axis, you have x-axis, and you have the origin, interest rate, quantity of money. Okay, so you have the money supply, which is a vertical straight line. Okay, and you have the money demand as usual. Okay, so at first you are at this point A with this interest rate at this quantity amount of money. So now central bank reduce the money supply through the sale of government bonds or through the sale of bonds. So therefore that reduce the money supply, shifting the money supply curve leftwards. Okay, so the money supply curve here will shift leftwards. Okay, so from point A moving to point B, there is a shortage. Okay, so what happened is because of the shortage, it will push up to point C. At the end, you can see that, okay, it results in higher interest rate and lower quantity of money. Okay, now same thing, if you want to relate this to the asset demand for money that you learned in last week, also can. Okay, interest rate becomes higher, means new bonds are more attractive. So the demand for old bonds become less. Lower asset demand for money. Don't forget about this, huh? You will see this in your final exam again. Okay, so therefore, this is how the graph looks like for contractionary monetary policy itself. So same thing, we are going to look into the details. Let's say I really want to list out what are the methods or what are the ways the central bank can do in order to achieve this. Okay, so first one, central bank can increase the cash reserve ratio, the required reserve. Okay, like for example, from initial 10%, now they must keep at least 20% of the deposit. So every time when people put in 100 ringgit, 20 ringgit must be kept in the banks. Only 80 ringgit can be loaned out. So the amount of money can be loaned out become less already. Okay, so therefore, that's one way for them to reduce the money supply. Okay, second is to adjust the bank rate. How do they achieve? How do they adjust the bank rate through OPR, overnight policy rate, to increase it? That's what happening. Okay, that's what happening in the last year as well. You can see OPR keep increasing. Now, just extra knowledge here. Why is that OPR keep increasing last year? Is this? Okay, one interesting scenario is this. It's helpful for you next time when you want to make some prediction. When US increase their interest rate, we will usually follow. Why? Okay, the rationale is this. Let's say, for example, last year, US keep increasing interest rate and we do not follow. It will actually make our ringgit Malaysia even weaker. Because why? When US interest rate becomes higher, the local investors will want to put their money in US banks. So therefore, when US interest rate becomes higher and we do not adjust our interest rate, all the money will flow out to US and they will cause our currency to be further depreciating. So it will make things worse. Our currency is very weak already. So therefore, to ensure that does not happen, to prevent that further depreciation, when US interest rate increasing, okay, we will follow the step as well, so that we can ensure that the investors will not cash out their money and put it into US. So that's the logic. Okay, so usually we will follow their steps. So therefore, whenever you see US increase their interest rate, people making noises already, you should be getting ready that next time let's say you start looking ready, you pay for a housing loan, you need to get ready that your housing loan will going to increase very, very soon. Okay, because when they increase, after 3 months, we will follow the step. So last year, every time they increased quite a lot of times last year. 2 to 3 times like that. So therefore, when they increase, we also follow. They increase, we also follow after a few months. So same thing this year, whether they will increase or not, we do not know. Okay, but maybe might not increase for now. But one thing you can see is that there is a relationship over there. So next time when you see US increase interest rate, you need to worry about that already. Because you need to prepare more money for your monthly installments for housing loans already, because you'll be affected. Your housing loan is based on your market interest rate. So therefore, it will hit you. So that's why people don't like it. Okay, so therefore people will complain about the government. Like, why are we doing that? Okay, one of the rationale now is that we want to ensure that our ringgit Malaysia is not so bad. So that at least we can retain the value, although it's very big now. Okay, so that's one of the rationale. And the other one is through open market operations, OMO. Okay, like here is to sell bonds. Okay, sell bonds or T-bills to banks or to people. Usually they sell it to banks. Okay, so therefore you can see that the methods, the details over here, I'm referring to the ways that central bank can do to achieve this outcome. So to control their cash reserve ratio, to control their OPR, and to control their to sell bonds under the open market operations. So that's the things that you need to know for contractionary monetary policy itself. Okay. So that's how they reduce the aggregate demand. You can see by using all these methods, it will reduce the consumption, reduce the investment, and reduce the aggregate demand. Could there be any drawback? Yes, it will have some drawbacks. Like for example, when you use contractionary, the good thing is it slows down the economy. But the bad thing is that it will cause unemployment, less business opportunities, lower output, and so on. Because you slow down the economy. Okay. So yeah, so these are the recap that you need to know for the tutorial itself. And now we can have a look into the tutorial questions already. Okay, so let's have a look into tutorial questions. Okay, so question number 1. Let's see. India Central Bank to conduct open market bond sales to absorb durable liquidity. Okay, sources say. So here they say that India Central Bank will conduct open market sales of bond. Okay, once government spending picks up and there's an improvement in the durable liquidity plus. Okay, so here they say currently government spending is low. Okay, and then now what happened is, so here they say government spending is low. Okay, and here it said earlier this month, the Reserve Bank of India said it will sell bonds through the open market operations to manage banking system liquidity. So they want to sell bonds, central bank. So central bank wanted to sell bonds. They sell bond. Okay, so therefore for this one is to do what? Is to reduce the money supply. Okay, so here they say central bank sell bonds. Okay, so central bank, CB. Okay, and you have banks here. Or if you want to refer to people also can, banks or people, the public. Okay, so central banks sell bonds to banks or people. So these people, this public, these banks will give money to central bank. So means what? So means that there will be less money supply, less borrowing, and therefore less consumption and investment. So what policy is this? Okay, contractionary, contractionary. Okay, so therefore this is a contractionary monetary policy. You see, once you understand that mind map, it's so easy for you to recognize the answer very, very fast. You see, the whole tutorial, the thing you need to know is only that piece of mind map. So easy way. cheat sheet. It's literally a cheat sheet. Okay, so now you know it's a contractionary monetary policy. So money supply will shift leftwards, increase and shift to the left. Okay, so what happened is this will increase the interest rate. Okay, discourage people from consuming or investing. So causing the aggregate demand to fall. Now let's say I want to prove all this in diagram. How? We have a lot of diagram to prove. First one is money market. Okay, so first one, this one money supply shift left is money market. Raise interest rate. New graph. I want to learn IS curve. No, okay, so it's a investment saving curve. So it's another diagram. And third one, I want to show demand aggregate demand curve shift leftwards. AD shift leftwards is the third one. So I want to show these three diagrams together. Three impacts on three diagrams. Okay, so how? So this is how it is being drawn. Okay, so usually we assume that the country for this one is starting from an inflationary gap. Why? Because they use contractionary. They use contractionary means that the country is currently having inflation. People spend like crazy. So therefore we want to slow down. Okay, so therefore we assume they start with inflationary gap. Okay, now anyway we draw money market first. Simple step. Okay, this is like how we drew just now. Fair enough. Money supply curve shift leftwards. So this is money market. The first step. Okay, now second diagram, we haven't learned it yet. Now second diagram is a investment curve. So this one, this curve itself show the relationship of interest rate on your y-axis and investments on your x-axis. Okay, so this is the investment curve. So therefore, here we say that interest rate will influence the level of investment. Like how? Let's say initially it's here at point A over here, and this lower interest rate, I1, and this amount of investment. Okay, this I and this interest rate. Okay, now what happened here is when now interest rate goes up because of lower money supply, right? Lower money supply shift the interest rate goes up, right? So now interest rate goes up to this point B. So with higher interest rate go up means what? Means returns of saving becomes higher. Okay, so people will save more. Okay, save more, spend less. And also higher interest rate means cost of borrowing increases. So what happens is investment will fall. Okay, so this is the one I want you to highlight. When interest rate is high, cost of borrowing is high, so investment will fall. Okay, so therefore you can see when interest rate goes up, investment level will goes down. Okay, as you can see from this movement along the investment curve. Okay, higher interest rate. Okay, higher interest rate result in lower investment level. This is the investment curve. And now I can show it on the aggregate demand and aggregate supply curve as well. The second one. Now let's look at the third one. Okay, usually ADS we draw it at the bottom one. We draw it at under this money supply curve because I can link it together. But never mind, now we learn this separately first. Okay, number 3 here, normal aggregate demand curve. We start with a inflationary gap. You can see a gap over here. Then eddy curve shift backwards because of the surplus. Now it moves to a new equilibrium point. So you can see lower price level and lower rate. So 3 graphs in total to show the 3 impacts that we see globally just now. We put everything into the diagram. Looks easy to draw, but make sure you practice how to draw for the exam. Okay, now next question. What other instrument could RBI is the central bank, the India central bank. What other instrument they can use to achieve the same effect? This is the details. Luckily, we got mind map. Luckily, we got record as well. Okay, so you see, you can just refer mind map, you got answers already, the details. Okay, we refer to the details, the step. What other instrument they can use to achieve that? Okay, so what happened is, so this is contractionary. Okay, so you don't need to see the answers, you can roughly know already. Okay, you can write here. Okay, to achieve contractionary monetary policy. Okay, what are the three methods we say? First one is what? Central bank can increase the cash reserve ratio. Okay. Number two, central bank can increase the bank rate, or what we call as the overnight policy rate. The third one is what we have just said. Under open market operation, they can sell bonds. Okay, but this one we covered just now already. So therefore, the other instrument is the number one and number two. How do I know if it's correct? You can see this answer over here. Contractionary, this is the answer. Increase cash reserve ratio and increase bank rate. That's why the mind map is so helpful just now. One size fits all. Save your life. Okay. Okay, move on. Next question. Question 2. Fill in the blanks. During times of high inflation, central bank will pursue what? Inflation. Inflation very high. Like what we learned just now. So they will use contractionary monetary policy to reduce the money supply. So easy. Right. Okay. Well, this really give me the memory of like A level that time, fill in the blanks, foundation. Okay, very rare to see this in the already. Okay, the effectiveness of monetary policy may be limited. Okay, so here means what? That means sometimes there could be a scenario that you use monetary policy also useless. During what time? Okay, this one I'll explain to you now. Okay, now let's say for example, in a scenario like this, let's say this is a y-axis, this is the x-axis. Now we look into the money market graph. Okay, so let's say this treasury is the quantity of money, this origin, this is the money supply. Let's say the money demand curve like this, downward sloping, but it's like this. Okay, let me draw it better, like this. So good. Okay, let's say the money demand curve is downward sloping, but like this. Okay, so what happened is in this scenario, at here you are at point A, at this interest rate, at this quantity of money, right? Okay, you get frozen. Oh no. Okay. Okay, so you see, let's say now government or central bank, they want to boost the economy. So how? They use expansionary law, they increase money supply, right? But do you realize one thing here? If they do that in this scenario, no impact one. You see, when you use expansionary, the purpose is to boost the aggregate demand, to boost the economic growth, and to reduce the interest rate. Fair enough. You see back the diagram just now. Expansionary is to reduce interest rate, right? But if the economy money market like this, you see, let's do here. Money supply increase, money supply increase already, but still here, interest rate still here. Let's say another time the money supply increase. It's still here. So do you realize one thing over here? If let's say if let's say the money market looks like this, okay, regardless of how central bank increase the money supply with the use of expansionary monetary policy, it will have no impact on the interest rate. Money demand remain like this. And what you can see over here is that people just keep holding more and more cash on their hand. Something is not right, right? Interest rate remain the same, no change. But you see, more and more money is being pulled. More and more money is being held. Why? Something is not right in the economic rate. Okay, this scenario is, for example, we say that there could be precaution. People are so scared. People are worried. People are worried that the economy gets worse. Usually this happens when the economy is not doing good. Okay, so they keep holding more and more cash on their hand. So this is why you can see when government keep increasing money supply in the economy, right? What happens is at the end of the day, the money, the interest rate remain the same, but they hold more and more money on their hand. So that means they not there to spend. They're not there to spend. They're very pessimistic towards the future of the economy. Second is there could be deflationary expectation. Usually all these happen together one because economy not doing good, people worry already, they're not there to spend, everyone is very pessimistic. So we all know that the price will sure become cheaper and cheaper. So if you foresee that the price will become cheaper and cheaper, right, then why you spend now? You might as well keep holding money until it becomes even cheaper, then only you buy ma. Now if everyone thinks like that, right, the economy will collapse really. Right? Why? Because everyone just hold their money, wait, but at the end it may not happen. Okay, because everyone waiting the price to keep going down. Deflationary expectation means we are expecting the price to go down further. Because everyone feel that economy not doing good now, we just hope the price can go further and further. We foresee, we predict, then we don't want to spend now. That what makes the country to go deeper into the recession, into the deflation. Okay, so therefore, monetary policy is ineffective here. This is called liquidity trap. Okay, so the answer for this one is liquidity trap. Okay, liquidity trap. So interest rate near zero already and cannot be lower further. Okay, next one. The term, okay, what term refers to the interest rate at which commercial banks borrow reserve from the central bank. Okay, so this is the commercial banks, they borrow among themselves or they borrow from central bank among banks themselves one. What we call as a overnight policy rate, bank rate, OPR. Okay, OPR. So we call it as OPR or bank rate, or sometimes we call it as discount rate. Okay, but in Malaysia we call it as OPR. But for simplicity, you just call it as bank rate. Okay. Question 3. Suppose the central bank introduce an expansionary monetary policy, okay, causing both aggregate demand, aggregate supply curve to shift. Okay, so let's say assuming they do expansionary monetary policy, AD and AS shift. Okay, examine the potential impact with Phillips curve. Okay, so again, we come back to Phillips curve again. Okay, so now same thing. Let's say this is the answers that are similar to the one that we talked about in Phillips curve. If we assume that aggregate demand, aggregate supply shift by the same proportion, right, then it's easy to analyze. Like for example, if it's being shifted by the same proportion like this one, very easy law. You know that at the end, it will result from point A to point B. Okay, so you can see here from point A to point B, after the shift of aggregate demand and SAS curve, and here it is reflected on the Phillips curve as well. Now, I'm not going to explain to you why is it like that. I already spent one video that I purposely created to explain to you what is Phillips curve already. So if you're wondering how come it's like that, you watch back the same answers. It's the same answers. Okay. Now, let's say if the AD and the SAS does not shift proportionally, like for example, in this scenario, okay, in this scenario, let's say now the AD curve, let's say shift more, okay, AD curve shift more, okay, but SAS curve remain the same. Okay, so what happened is at the end, you can see that it will result in point B over here with an inflationary gap. Okay, you realize that point B over here with an inflationary gap. Okay, so therefore, at the end, it's no longer from point A to point B on the Phillips curve anymore, but on point D donkey here. Okay, means what? The inflation go even higher. You can see inflation goes even higher up to 8%. Okay, but lower unemployment here. Okay, as you can see, point B. Okay, because now people overwork already. You can see that they are producing beyond the capacity of the economy. Okay, so therefore, here, okay, the excessive shift of the aggregate demand curve can be translated into the Phillips curve itself from point B to point B here. So not at point B anymore, but at point B don't see there. Okay, because the excessive shift of AD can be translated by the translated into the Phillips curve in terms of the movement along. Remember AD curve? Movement along the cheat sheet of Phillips curve. So therefore, when AD shift way more, so it will be translated into the movement along the Phillips curve itself. Okay, so higher inflation and lower unemployment trade-off. Okay, so therefore, this will be the outcome. Okay, now one last question. IMF says that UK should defer. Hold on. Hello? Hi. Yes. Yeah, I'm actually having class now. Yeah. Okay. Now, additional question. Okay, let's see this one. Okay, let's say UK should defer spending cuts if growth disappoints. Okay, so now here, question: if the Bank of England is to loosen monetary policy, loosen means what? Loose. Okay, means expansionary. Okay, what will be the effect on UK's economy? Expansionary, very easy already. Okay, so here, that's how the graph being drawn. You have one market on money market. You have one graph on investment curve. Okay, and you have one graph for AD, AS. Okay, so money market, you show the money supply increases, interest rate fall. Okay, I show this very quickly because I drew everything for you. But when you go back, you do this question, you draw it properly step by step. You don't see on it. I can assure you, you don't know how to draw in the exam. Every semester like that. See very easy. In the exam, you know how to draw. Suddenly, you know how to draw money market. Okay, investment curve, interest rate, and investment. Okay, so you can see lower interest rate. Okay, so at first it's at point A. Okay, now what happened is interest rate becomes lower already. Okay, interest rate becomes lower. So what happened here is it goes to point B at higher investment level. Okay, then we can show ADS as well. Okay, so again here we can assume that they are starting with recessionary gap. Your economy not good, then only they want to loosen it. Okay, so you can see at first start with point A here with a recession gap at this price at this output. Okay, with recession gap. Okay, so AD increases because this increased aggregate demand. Okay, it shift AD to the right, shortage, and then push up to the price level to point C. Okay, so at higher price level, at full employment, now we assume that this is same with this money supply curve. Assume like this. So that means now with the help of money supply, okay, we manage to boost the aggregate demand to full employment. So this amount of money at this interest rate, okay, are being used to purchase all these outputs in the economy. So that's why you can see we draw like this to make sure that it's being seen together, it's being translated together. Okay, so if they ask you to draw these three diagrams, you put all the verbal contents into these diagrams, okay? Money market, investment, and ATS. Better? That's all for today's class. So we left with last two tutorials, and the last two tutorials cover one big topic. It's called balance of payments and exchange rate. Two main things, balance of payments and exchange rate. And that's usually for your section C content, like the media review articles, but this is what I know now. Okay?